Ladies and gentlemen, this is David Mirikitani with another episode of Matt Chat, brought to you by USA Wrestling, the national governing body for wrestling in the United States, and by Nike Wrestling. Go to athleteps.com for all of your Nike and USA Wrestling branded gear. It is my pleasure to be joined by the new volunteer assistant at Arizona State University, still out east, Eric Thompson. Good morning. Thanks for coming on the show, man.
Yeah, good morning to you. Thank you.
We were talking off air. You've been doing some traveling and trying to figure out housing situations and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, it's crazy, like trying to, today's buying a house, like being a person who's going to buy a house somewhere, climate is a little wild. So my wife and I went out Labor Day to Phoenix and I bet we looked at 50 houses in 2 days, just trying to find something.
Well, you got to make that decision, and it's when you're going to live with for a while. Good news, our interest rates are low, and it's warm out there.
Yeah, so, exactly right.
And there's a lot of sweet spots where right now you can find a good deal, so that's awesome. Mm-hmm. I'm going to kind of go backward, start at the end, and then go jump around. How did this happen? How did you get in touch with Arizona State, or had they been courting you for a while? How did this all happen?
Yeah, so I've been friends with Frank, since I moved out to State College in 2013, and we just immediately hit it off, and we'd always talked about coaching together somewhere down the road and trying to figure that out eventually. And there's been opportunities places, but really I just wanted to be with, at a place that's competitive, right? Is a place that you can have success, and Arizona State's one of those places. And then I went to Budapest with the cadet world team this last summer, and I was with Pritz out there.
Sure.
And Pritz and we connected, and he's an awesome dude, right? He's just great, super
he's a bundle of energy. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So he's super positive, and we just, we connected and we had a great time. And I got back, and then Zeke called me and told me they had this available. So I went out and interviewed, and it went well, and we just kind of worked from there.
Yeah, I do a lot of, I don't know if you want to call it coaching or mentoring, but of younger kids. And I'm older than you. I don't know what they teach in high school now, but if they don't teach networking, and if they don't teach networking in college, like as a specific class and how to do it, people are missing out, because people hire their friends. People make big decisions based on friendships and relationships.
Yeah, that's 100% right. It's just the way of the world and how it works. So if you're not willing to put yourself out there and connect with people, then it's going to be tough. So it's been cool to kind of see that in action.
Yeah, you can't be afraid to be the young guy sitting at the old person table, because the old people are the ones making all the decisions.
That's right. That's right.
So I knew who you were. I told you this off air. I'm friends with Don Bradley. I remember you guys wrestling, it seemed like 3 times a month, for a while there. And obviously 2 super elite guys, and kind of nip and tuck, a lot of 1-point matches. But I went back and looked at your resume. I knew what you won in high school. And I knew you were a multiple-time national champion at Grandview. Grant Turner's the assistant coach there. He does the other podcast with me where we just talk about the world of wrestling. And I knew you had placed at the Olympic trial. So that's all obviously high-level credentials. How did you end up at the Nittany Lion Wrestling Club? Let's start with that. And then what was it like training with Snyder? And I mean, that's sort of big guy university, it feels like, with the coaching staff and that sort of thing.
Yeah, so it was kind of crazy. I was at Iowa State for a little bit with Coach Kale, but then I left and I went to Grandview. And, when I was graduating Grandview, I'd just gotten engaged to my now wife. And we were kind of talking about it, and I knew I wanted to continue wrestling. I wasn't sure, what, and she had another year left of school. So we were kind of talking about maybe staying at Grandview or maybe training somewhere closer or seeing what we could do, and Mitchell was, Coach Mitchell he wanted me to do whatever I wanted to do. Obviously they wanted to keep me, but he was excited for me. So basically I just texted Coach Kale after I graduated, and he was like, yeah, come on out. And kind of kismet a little bit. My wife's great aunt lived in State College, and she was a professor here. So when he texted me and said that, I was like, well, all right, I'll get out there as soon as I can. And it was literally 2 weeks later, I'd packed my car up and drove out here, and, we've kind of stayed here ever since. We lived in Lock Haven for a little bit when I was coaching there for a year, and then I came back to the club to coach. So we've been in Central Pennsylvania now for 8 years.
So there's a lot of mystery around Nittany Lion and Penn State, right? Like, what isn't mysterious? I think let me start by saying, like, I've had Cody Sanderson on the show. I have a ton of respect for how those guys handle things. The kids love them. So there's nothing negative about this, except some programs seem to be a little more transparent than others. Okay. So we saw a couple of years ago, it was when Varner was on the team. So it was a while back when the Nationals were in St. Louis. They worked out. It had to be a long time ago now, probably like 15 years ago. But when they came in to work out, Cody kind of ran the room and Kale just wrestled with guys. So I don't know if that's still going on, but when is that how it is? Like, do you work out? The coaches work out with the kids a lot? Do you see that?
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty consistent thing is guys getting on the mat, and I think every coach is different where if they want to wrestle, they can wrestle. But I think it's something that, if you do it consistently and you're always wrestling, then you'll be able to do it for a long time. But if you stop, then I'm fearful of ever stopping wrestling, to be honest with you, because I just don't know what's going to happen when I stop. I know how bad it hurts now, but I mean, if I just stop one day, that's the real fear, right?
Yeah, stopping and restarting is difficult. I actually did that, and you're right. It's like learning how to walk again. So, So obviously they brought you out to Arizona State for an abundance of reasons. I think there's certain schools that really focus on upper weights, and there's a lot. I'm pretty sure the percentages would show there's a lot more falls and things, pins up there where you get more bonus points. Obviously, ASU's loaded with Schultz and with Norfleet. I anticipate you're going to work out with those guys a lot. And how excited are you about that?
Yeah, I'll be on the mat quite a bit, but even Zeke said that's not something that we look for you to do all the time. But yeah, I mean, I love wrestling. That's something that I want to continue doing and continue wrestling. But yeah, I'm excited to work with those guys. Obviously Colton's already incredible. And so is Cordell, but I see a lot of potential in Cordell, and I'm excited to work with him and be as helpful as I can and him achieving his goals. Right. So just coming in, right. I'm coming in a little bit late, later than I'd want to, but it's just the reality of the situation. So however I can get in there and help them, get what they want, that's what I'll do.
Yeah, I think, like you said, Schultz is, Olympic alternate, world team member, I think they sort of had an agreement with Arizona State last year where he got to train a lot of Greco during the season and probably didn't put as much time in on, especially probably on mat wrestling, collegiate mat wrestling, which obviously couldn't be more polar opposite than Greco. So when you run into a Cassiope or those kind of things, that can be a huge difference. And if you're going to have difficulty getting up, that can impact your aggressiveness level on your feet. One sort of permeates the other. And one of the hardest things I think to simulate is just weight. Like if like, hey, here's what you got to do against the Cassiopes of the world. Well, Cordell can't put that kind of weight on him to feel it. Plus, that's not really Cordell's style to go ride a guy for 4 minutes. So I would imagine that one thing alone, plus I'm sure I know how good you were as a wrestler. And as you get older, maybe you can't do things as fast, but you learn a lot more. You know a lot more tricks and things like that. So I would imagine just some one-on-one sparring with him there would not only influence his bottom wrestling, but probably make him more aggressive on his feet.
Yeah, just figuring out some solutions, right? Wrestling's been so long that it's like this bang, bang, bang thing where it needs to be so hard. And I don't really, obviously wrestling's hard enough. And I talked about this before a little bit, but without like exterior factors of like life and things happening, these kids are going to class, they're doing all this stuff, worrying about all this stuff. Like if you're just coming in and wrestling 4 or 5 days a week, it's a lot because it's frustrating. It's interpersonal. It's demanding on your body. If you're not eating enough, you're not doing this enough, you're going to feel it a lot more. So, coming in and just trying to make it easy for them to get better. Right. So when we get on the mat, it has a real purpose and it has a real identity behind what we're trying to do that day, and less of, just going live for the sake of going live and actually trying to learn some stuff and figure out our bodies and figure out movements in space and some of those things.
I think you and a lot of these other coaches have figured out that sometimes less is more.
Yeah.
I remember Randy Couture is a friend of mine, and he was telling me about one of the trips he was on, international trips, and the U.S. team was doing all these hard simulation matches, and the Russians were over there playing soccer, and it's sort of the hay is in the barn theory, right? Like, you're not going to get a lot better the last 48 hours before a match. I mean, I coach MMA. I see some of these coaches in the back, like trying to teach somebody a new move, like 12 minutes before they fight. I'm like, like for like 14 reasons, that's a bad idea.
Yeah.
So I think you guys are the next iteration of it, figuring out like, okay, we're going to light spar today, or we're just going to, sort of feel our way through some positions. And I guess that's sort of the evolution of the play wrestling thing, right? That's part of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, absolutely. Right. It's like my assistant coach in college I would ask him Paul Reedy, I'd ask him a question, when we because I get a little squirrely, right? You start like this or that, thinking in your head, like all these things. And he's like, dance with the girl that brought you, just continuing doing the things that you were doing that brought you here and not worrying about the things that didn't get you here, which is, I've used that a lot throughout my coaching career, but right. It's just, yeah, like you said, like the hay's already in the barn. There's no reason to tweak, change, or go harder, right? You're not going to get in shape in the next 48 hours, and one thing I think about a lot is if a good kid's already good, then just let the horse run. Right. And then if a kid's bad and he's not, like, say he's not really great, you probably get more out of him if he feels good, as opposed to running or telling him you're going to get into shape and be a grinder. You want to be a grinder, you got to feel good.
I think that is the essence of why recruiting is so important, right? Like, there's some things that you just can't teach. There's some skill. I mean, I think some of the best teachers of in American wrestling are little league and like junior high coaches, because they get these kids so good. These club coaches too, like, they have these skill sets. By the time they get to the Eric Thompsons of the world, to the Zeke Jones of the world, obviously super elite technicians, you guys are, but they know how to do a drop step correctly. Like, they're not trying to grab a leg with these kind of grip or something like that, so you don't have to go backwards so much, and you can sort of tweak guys. Kendall Cross was on my show about a year ago, and he said something that was really fascinating. Like, everybody want to talk about him and Terry. And I said, how much did you spend practicing for Terry? And he goes, no one's really asked it to me that way. He goes, everybody thinks I spent all this time getting ready for Terry. He goes, I spent all my time trying to get in positions where Terry had to wrestle me.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, put guys in positions that you're better at than like if I'm wrestling a guy who's good at hand fighting, I'm going to try and put him on my legs, bait him to get to my legs, as opposed to like, hey, let's stand up and bang. Like, I'm not interested in that. Like, I want to wrestle where I'm better, not get into a brawl.
Perfect example. And like, if you're better in with heavyweights, there's a lot of pummeling. Like, if you're better when you have the left side underhook as opposed to the right side, the more time you spend there, the odds are in your favor.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know if enough coaches are teaching that, because like I'm working with some guys in jiu-jitsu, and we're adding wrestling to their game, and sometimes they get a little frustrated. And I'm like, they're already really good, like really good. And I'm like, this is like salt and pepper. It's already a nice meal, right? Like, it's just trying to make it perfect, but you got to spend, I think it's a different, Pritz talks to me all the time about training cycles. And, I know that's mental. I know it's physical. I also know some of it's technique, right? Like, for example, if Richie Figueroa comes in Arizona State, and I know this isn't true, but if he can't get off bottom, you got to teach him how to get off bottom, right? Like, that has to happen. But he should also spend time on his feet where he's really comfortable, so he leaves practice at least feeling a little bit good every day. Like, if he just spends 2 hours on bottom, it's brutal, right?
Yeah, I mean, if a guy is, if you focus so much too, I think sometimes I think about bottom a lot, like where I think think if you get ridden like one time, it's like everyone's like, well, they're not very good on bottom. So then the guys on top see that and they start going harder. Like your next match, the guy's like, I can ride him, I can ride him. And it's more of a mentality thing at times. Like, right, obviously it's technical aspects to it too, but it like becomes your mentality as well. Like, I'm not very good on bottom, I'm not very good on bottom. But sometimes you just wrestle guys who are really good on top, where it's just you stay even keel about it. I think a lot of it is mentality. But yeah, I mean, like you were saying before too, high school kids now, I mean, I think a lot of them are really, they're just ready to go right away, and sometimes it's, you just gotta let them go. And if they have questions, help them, but they've had the success. And if they're like teching the best kids in the country coming out of high school, they're probably ready to wrestle the best kids in the country coming into college.
Yeah, the bottom thing, I think you're absolutely right about. Like, it's sort of a commitment, right? Like, if I'm not 100% committed to riding you, like you said, A, you can feel it, and B, like, I might try to mat return you once, but I'm not going to mat return you twice. And,
Mhm.
like the Kyle Dakes of the world, I mean, like, because he's a different rider than like Spencer Lee. Like Spencer Lee gets to that one hold and he just turns everybody, you know,
Yeah.
one or two or three variations of that hold. I mean, like Dake, he can turn you, but basically he just wanted to ride you hard and he was just committed to it. And then on bottom, if I know, hey, every time I stand up, Eric's going to drop me on my freaking head, maybe I don't want to stand up so much, right?
Yeah,
Like,
you're still trying to figure out ways to not do that, right? And just like we said, it's like putting yourself in positions to win. So if a guy's gonna mat return you every time, maybe you stay down on the mat and try not to get up to your feet so they can't lock their hands, or having a plan to get their hands get on the inside of it so you can protect yourself a little bit. Yeah, there's a lot of things to that, right? Like the bottom thing, just because it can drive you crazy as a coach, it can drive you crazy as an athlete because you're like, why am I getting ridden? But I think a lot of it's just not being positive enough with guys and not hyping them up enough when they do get away in practice, right? Like, dang, you're so good on bottom. Like, you're not
yeah,
getting ridden by anybody.
yeah. Or hey, man, you were almost out there against the best rider in the room. When
Mm-hmm.
you get to the match, you're going to be fine, kind of thing.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah, the ready to go thing you were talking about too, like it kind of struck a chord with me. So for people that don't know, you were a super elite high school wrestler,
Yeah.
top top four in the country by anybody that was doing rankings at the time, and four might be too low. I'm just kind of giving people a reset, right? Like really like probably one or two. But it's interesting because when you're a big guy, it's really hard to win. Like I was 119 pounder as a freshman. Okay. I'm guessing you weren't.
215.
Yeah. Okay. So if we have equal skills, I mean, like literally identical, it's going to be a lot easier for me to win just because I'm going to have a lot less seniors to wrestle, a lot less juniors and seniors. That's why you see a lot of guys that are four-time state champs started out at 106 and those kind of weights.
Yeah.
And so, a guy like you, like I think Dom won it 3 times, but had a real controversial match his sophomore year. I mean, he got it, but kind of could have gone either way. But guys like heavyweights and 215s, 220s, guys that can get 2 state titles, and then when they're sort of like, oh, this guy placed at cadets. All right. So now he's sort of wrestling. He's not wrestling, sort of grown men yet. I would think that it's got to be a little, you have to have a lot of positive self-talk even back then to be like, I'm not winning right away because I went from junior high where I was killing people probably to now I'm wrestling seniors. Cause I mean, 215 and heavyweights predominantly juniors and seniors.
Yeah. So I mean, you do, right? Like I remember I was actually really bad in junior high. Like I was okay.
Oh,
I mean, I
really?
was okay. Yeah. Yeah. But that was like my growth period. So fifth, sixth, and seventh grade, I wrestled 130 all 3 years, but I grew like 6.5 inches. And
But you
then
didn't
eighth
gain
grade,
weight?
yeah, no, I mean, I did, but like it was more maturity, like, just
The
lengthen.
baby fat fell off you. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Fair
A
enough.
little bit, a little bit. And then eighth grade, I wrestled 171. And then my freshman year, I weighed like 195 and I wrestled 215. But I remember I was like, I placed at state my freshman year, I got seventh, and that was like the biggest boost, right? Sometimes that win can turn into a commitment, right? Like I was like, I'm committed to this. Like I'm gonna do this thing. So when that kind of happened, I changed things, right? I changed how I viewed wrestling. I just really put two things together about like the harder I work, the more success I'll have. Like if I just go and wrestle every weekend in the summer, like the summer after my freshman year at Waverly, me and another kid, I wrestled like 250 matches that summer.
Wow.
I went to like 6 or 7 team camps, and I just show up and be like, hey, can I wrestle on your team? Hey, can I wrestle on your team? Like we just went all the time, and I wrestled so many matches, like, and I'd lose or I get beat by a kid who maybe wasn't that good, but it didn't matter. I was like, I just need to wrestle. I just need to wrestle all the time and go and compete, and eventually, like, I remember it's so funny. Like I remember my high school coach, but I'd like tell my dad, like when Tolly placed at the Worlds in 2006, I was like, I take Tolly down sometimes. Like I can get a takedown on him. Like I could probably beat some of these guys. I wonder how I do with Cormier. Like I need to wrestle Cormier. Like just insanity, right? Just out of touch with the actual reality of the situation. But like sometimes, I think that's what you need, especially when you're a big kid at a young age. Like, because there are times it gets tough. It is hard, and you're wrestling grown men.
That strikes such a chord with me, Eric, because like my dad is a junior college coach and he had all these kids that were college All-Americans and none of them won state. I mean, he's
Mhm.
actually a really good coach and he would develop guys. And so
Yeah.
my freshman year, I didn't place. And I'm like, I think part of it was how good do you have to be to win freaking state, right? Because like this guy's making the national finals and he took second at state. I'm like, plus like he was 18, I was 14. I'd go up and work out with him. He's kicking the crap out of me. I'm like, man, I'll never be that good. And then two things happened for me. There was a kid on my team that won state. He was way better than me. Like, I mean, he's 20 pounds heavier, but he was just a kid, right? Like he was just a guy. He ended up
Yeah.
being really good, was a Division I All-American. But at the time, like, super
You
nice
don't know that.
guy. He's a
Yeah.
guy, like you're saying, like Tolly, like I know him. Like I know, like when you don't know where the bar is, it's so
Yeah.
frustrating. And like those kind of guys set the bar. Like okay, I got to be that good. And
Mhm.
then I wrestled not as many matches as you did, but I wrestled a Greco match. I beat some guy like 18-17. Like we're probably both pinned 6 times. I just landed on top the last time. And they go, hey, that was so and so. He was the AA runner up in Illinois. And Illinois was
Yeah,
two
they're good.
classes back then. And he was at 112 and I was 19. But I'm like, oh my, you start connecting dots that don't really
Yeah.
there. It's 12
Yeah.
versus 19. It's Greco versus folk style. But I'm like, oh, I can do it. And it changed everything for me. Those two things changed everything for me. And it's interesting to hear that a lot of people have those aha moments.
Well, it's just one moment, right? It's just one match, and all of a sudden you're like, I'm that good. Like that's all it takes is just like you work super hard, and then the gratification may not be like you beating the best guy in the country, but like no one knows who you are. So you go and wrestle hard and like you win. It's just like, dude, I'm right there. Like I can freaking do whatever I want to do. Like I'll win this thing. Like I just need to keep doing this, keep banging my head against the wall, and eventually I'm going to get there.
Yeah. And what's interesting is to me, wrestling is like a funnel. Like when you're young, like you said, you can wrestle 300 matches in a year. And then you get to the senior
Mhm.
level and you were there and you're lucky to get 30 matches in a year. And then if you do, people are like, hey, you're competing too much, you're overtraining, you know, and I mean, and you're wrestling all the same guys, right? Like if you're on the
Yeah.
ladder, it's like the same 9 guys, like all the time, right? So
Yeah.
it feels like you have to have those aha moments early, but then you sort of need to keep having them when you want to level up, I would think, right?
Yeah. I mean, to be honest with you, I had mine at the end of my career, like at the trials. I beat Tony Nelson, and I was like, dude, I freaking can beat these guys. And I think it was like a part of it was after I lost, I was kind of like, well, now I'm gonna be done wrestling, so whatever, let's freaking fight.
Got to
And
lose. Yeah.
the best I ever wrestled in my life, which it's always easier to wrestle on the backside of a tournament like that because also senior level guys they don't wrestle sometimes, which is always disappointing. I don't know if you read like Thomas Gilman's blog the other
I
day, but
I did.
it was really good, right? It was really good. And Thomas has like a lot of great thoughts like that. So I think sometimes like, yeah, you're searching for those moments. You're searching for a sign on the road that you're going in the right direction is what it really is.
I like that. I like that a lot because that appeals to both coaches and athletes and just in life, right? Like maybe
Yeah.
you're struggling. Like I'm sure you weren't, but like maybe you weren't in the best place mentally, and then Zeke Jones calls, and you're
Yeah.
like, hey man, I'm probably more appreciated than I thought I was, kind of thing.
Mhm.
Yeah, the Gilman thing was interesting because I have a lot of friends on the senior level, a lot of guys who come on the podcast, and he had just been on the podcast like 2 weeks earlier. And Gilman seems like sort of a kinder, softer Gilman than like a friend of mine set that interview up, and I said, I don't think he's the same guy that ran into the Minnesota huddle. You know, like
He,
I think he's grown and matured a lot, right?
I mean, he still has that in him, right? And you get him fired up a little bit, but it's much more of an understanding person than it once was, I
It's
think.
more in the background than in the forefront. You know, I mean, you
Yeah,
don't ever
like
lose that, but you know, like
no,
he's not leading with
no,
that anymore.
no.
Yeah.
I think which is what most of us are, right? Like, I mean, even with myself, I'll catch myself like my wife will be like, all right, you sound crazy right now. I'm like, all of a sudden I'm like, she's like, you're yelling, talking about what like wrestling, whatever. And I'm like, I, I don't know what's going on. Like, that's just kind of how she's like, your eyes are crazy when you do that. I'm like, I know. I was like, I just get fired up.
Crazy. When your wife tells you you have the crazy eyes, you have the crazy eyes.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. She catches me sometimes. Like I'll just start talking about like something this or that. Like guys, like when a bunch of guys didn't wrestle back on the world team trials, I was just like I was fired up about it too. To be
yeah,
honest, I mean,
it's interesting because like I said, I've had a couple guys on that didn't do that, right? And I
mm,
guess there's a two-sided coin, right? Like one is it's my life, I can do whatever I want, you know, as long as my coaching
absolutely.
staff's okay with it. I think the other part that's a little more difficult is if you're on a college coaching staff and you do that, right?
Yeah.
Like let's say you were wrestling right now and you did that, like you lost to we'll pick Gable Stevenson where there's absolutely no shame if you lost that match. Okay. So I'm gonna pick a really good guy. All right. So if you lose to Gable and like the you know, the quarters or the semis, right? Now you drop down and you're like, well, I can't make the team. You know, I got to win 6 matches or 4 matches just to take third and be on the national team. I don't really want to do it. And you don't do it. Okay. Like that's fine. That's your life. You're a grown man, you know, you're in
Yeah.
your 30s, whatever. But then when an Arizona State guy gets in the backside of the scuffle or Cliff Keen Las Vegas, or probably more importantly, the Nationals, you might have a difficult conversation where the kid doesn't say to you, it's kind of a double standard, huh, coach? Like, I'm supposed to go bust my tail. And so I think those guys, they're not identical scenarios.
No.
But we all lead by example and lead from the front, good or bad, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think absolutely. Like, I don't. They're obviously super different, and guys have different reasons for not competing. And it can always be whatever the reason is. Just for me personally, I like wrestling, right? Like I've always loved wrestling, and I think for me that's what like an opportunity to wrestle is an opportunity to wrestle, no matter who it is or where it is or what the situation is. Competing is fun, and that's why I did it. That's why you grind so hard and you do all these things that suck, right? Really, they're
Yeah.
just not super fun. So I think just being able to carry that out with your athletes is a super strong thing, right? Like it doesn't need to be do or die. If you're not first, you're last, right? It can be there's an in between of just you're a winner if you give 100% effort and you try as hard as you can. As goofy as that sound, as much as I made fun of it myself growing up, like
No, there's a
it's
lot of truth in it, right?
yeah, it is. It's just like you try your hardest, a lot of good things will happen, and you'll feel good about it personally.
Well, and you said earlier, which I'm older, so I can definitely agree with you. So like I'm scared to quit wrestling, or not quit wrestling, but stop wrestling because I don't know what's going
Mhm.
to happen. I think once you quit anything, it gets a little easier, right?
Yeah,
So like, you know, you quit on the backside of a tournament one time. Let's say you're sort of really injured, right? And you could wrestle if your life depended on it, like, you know, but it doesn't. So you do it. Then the next time you're just nicked up a little bit. You could go, but you don't. It gets
yeah,
easier. I have to give a shout out to one of the Arizona State kids, Ja'Cory Teamer, who came back through the backside of the bracket and wrestled like a bat out of hell.
yeah. He was
And
crazy.
you know, I had told Pritz, I mean, I have no knowledge of any of these guys. I go, I would think a kid like Ja'Cory may not want to wrestle in the back because he's, you know, he's been number one at everything for so long that, you know, maybe he just doesn't want to do that. And he said that kid's got more heart than you'll ever know. And, he goes, I don't worry about him there. He's like, I worry about what we got to do to keep him from getting on the backside, but I have
Yeah.
no concern about that. He's going to be a goer, and
Mhm.
Arizona State, and I can say you guys now, you guys scored a lot of points on the back, right? Like to get to team trophy, because that
Yeah.
4, 5, 6, 7, 8, those were all probably 1 or 2 blood round matches apart, right? Like the 8th place team wins 2 more and the 4th place team wins 2 less, and they're flip-flopped.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes just, and I was thinking about this. I wanted to quit track when I went out for track when I was in 7th grade, and I wanted to quit. My dad was like, "We don't have to. You're not going to quit, but you don't have to
Right.
go. You don't have to do it next year." And I remember thinking like, and then I wanted to quit baseball when I was in 7th grade too. And he was like, "Well, you're not going to quit, but next summer, if you don't want to play baseball, you're going to wrestle all summer." And I'm like, "I already wrestle all summer, dude. That's fine. Like, I don't care. Like, we're already doing that."
Don't threaten me with a good time.
Yeah, like we've already been doing that. Like we just put baseball on top of it at times, right?
Yeah,
So I was
sure.
like, but yeah, I mean, and Jacory, right? He's just a dog, right? It's just,
He
he's
is, but I don't think a lot of people, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I don't think a lot of people thought that. I think
yeah,
they thought he was a front side dog, right?
no.
Like, but just because people hadn't seen it, and like
Mhm.
it, in some other tournaments, he had maybe not wrestled as well on the back, right? Like in some, USA wrestling events, right?
Mhm.
But he went down and got it, man. And like that Hayden
Oh, yeah.
Hidley match, like, it was interesting because I live in St. Louis, so I actually have good tickets and it was right in front of us. And the funny thing is there's like 12 people in the stands because of COVID. So you can actually all talk to each other. And like, I think he scored like a 6 and a 4, like right, like a 2 to 4 and a 4. And I look over and I'm like, am I dreaming or is this like 10 to nothing down there? Like,
Packed him. It was
yeah,
crazy.
yeah. And Hidley kind of came back a little bit, like, because Hidley's a dog too, like,
Yeah.
that's the thing. Like, you get up on a guy like that, you're like, I got to step on him because he's not going to go away. Like, there's some guys you can
No.
break. He's not that kid's. You're not going to break him. You can beat him, but you're not going
No,
to break
he's a
him.
stud. He's a stud. Yeah, it's crazy, right? Like just sometimes on that backside, man, if you can come out and just give full effort, if a guy's not ready for it, he's not going to recover from it. I would say, especially like senior level. I saw that a lot. Like even myself, like I came back and wrestled Telford one time and I was not ready to fight. Like I was just not, I was ready to wrestle, but I wasn't ready to like battle royale. I was like, oh my gosh. And I remember being super frustrated, and just continuing to move forward after that, even after that match, just getting your head back on straight and coaching wise, just having guys, who cares? Let's just go. Like it's time to go. Time to go.
Yeah, it's a good. It's a good lesson to learn, and I think, like a couple of years ago, I had stopped wrestling, was coaching, but then I fought in the jujitsu worlds, and
Yeah.
you forget what you feel like. You forget like always looking at the scale. You forget
Yeah.
what it bothers you when you're like, man, I thought I was going to lose 3 pounds in practice, and somehow I only lost 1.5 pounds. You forget like resenting,
Stress.
drinking. Yeah, you forget all the outside stressors. Plus, you forget I could go lose and get embarrassed, because like coaches and Frank obviously preaches this the gratitude and it certainly has permeated ASU's program, but trying to get that people to relax on that tension part. Like, look, the only person I owe this to is myself, my coaches, and my teammates, because we're the only one, and my family probably. But like some guy writing a blog, he doesn't get an opinion that matters. So
Mhm.
all right. Well,
Yeah. I mean,
Pritz is going to come down and put me in a rear naked choke if I don't talk about this volunteer job. We got
yeah.
10 minutes left.
Let's do
So
it.
I better get into it. So I kind of want to set the table. There's at a college or university, there's a head coach. There can be 2 assistant coaches, a volunteer coach, and then if available, an RTC coach. So
Yep.
what they've done is sort of expanded the coaching roster from 4 to 5 with Zeke, Frank, Lee, you and Mark. And Mark moves over full time to Sunkiss, which is the RTC. Sunkiss
Mhm.
is an interesting RTC because it's Arizona State's RTC, but it's also like a national one where like James
Yeah.
Green and Burroughs are also Sunkiss members under the Martori family. So, having said that, how excited are you to be a volunteer assistant? And what are the actual duties of a volunteer assistant? Are they involved in recruiting? What are the do's and don'ts of a volunteer assistant?
Yeah, so it's funny. I just had my compliance meeting with Arizona State. So
You
yeah,
know now exactly what it is.
yeah, yeah. I had an idea. Basically, I'm allowed to like text kids as long as it's after June 15th, their sophomore year, and kind of communicate with them. And then also like I'm just not allowed to call is pretty much about it. So when a kid comes on visit, I can be there and be with them, and the school can pay for, like clothes or anything incidentals with like a trip or something. They can pay for that, but the school is not allowed to pay me. So then the RTC, whatever RTC you have, or even just boosters,
Yeah, booster money usually is where it
Yep.
comes from. Yeah.
Yep. So they'll pay my wage, in my salary.
I think most people figured this out, but you're not out there just doing this out of your own free will. Like, not you, but volunteer assistants in general, right? Like that's a real job. It's got a salary. I'm sure the benefits work differently because you're not on the ASU staff per se. So you're not in the Arizona State healthcare plan or the 401k or
Yeah.
whatever, but you are getting those. And I'm not asking you to talk about that. This is more of a
No.
50,000 foot view for people to understand that. It's interesting. You can text and not call or talk because there's a lot of times like, hey man, could I call you? It'd be a lot easier. And you have to be
Yeah.
like, no, you can call Frank, Lee, or Zeke,
So they can call us, but we can't call them.
Oh, okay. So this is funny. Okay. So when I was recruiting, there were different rules. Like you couldn't talk to kids. They were sort of the same, but like different time frames. So
Yeah.
we'd go to Virginia Beach, and then it was the junior year. Like you couldn't do it till their junior year. So,
Yeah.
obviously everybody was, I don't want to say this, but everybody was cheating because kids were committing early. And there's no way you commit without having talked to somebody.
No.
But what would happen is like you would go win the tournament as a junior, right? Okay. And supposedly nobody could talk to you, right?
July 1, right?
Right. No, but you win. So I walk over to you because junior college didn't have those rules. And I would be like, hey, do you want to talk to this school, this school, this school, and this school? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, give me your phone. And I would call them. I would call those schools from your phone so they could call back and it'd be legal.
Okay.
So like,
it's crazy, right?
yeah, it's funny because like I would walk over there and all the coaches would be sitting in the stand just laughing like, and then their phones would all ring one at a time. I'd come back, they'd get mad about whose phone rang first. I'm like, I swear it was alphabetical order, so. But you're going to be able to do basically, and then you can also obviously be involved with Sunkist, right? Like, be a right hand to Mark and that sort of thing, right?
Yep, that's kind of the plan. Is I'll be doing a lot with the RTC, because that's where my experience lies right now. And I'm excited to work with Mark, man, right? He kills it. He does like such a great job with the girls and with the guys too. So I'm excited. And Thomas Gilman had great things to say with him and in our brief conversations too. He's just, he loves wrestling like myself. So I'm excited to connect with him about that.
I mean this in the biggest way possible. He's a complete wrestling nerd. Like he'll break down film. Like I've had private conversations with him and he'll name like the number 4 guy on the Iranian team ladder, national ladder, and what he does better than anybody else in the world, and how he's trying to teach that to like a Nick Suriano or a Brandon Courtney. Like, you're like, dude,
I know. I love
some
it.
guys are still working on backhands and go behind and chase the hamstring, right?
I know.
Yeah, I got invited out to the Arizona State golf tournament this past spring. We did a really cool podcast with Frank, Lee, and Zeke all together, like sitting around a fire pit. The energy, I don't know how to quantify it or even qualify it, but the energy there is real. Like those guys all genuinely like each other. They all genuinely respect each other. There's no, you have to stay in your lane, I have to stay in my lane. Like they're all learning from each other. They all obviously have different credentials. Zeke seems like a very, very good CEO of, obviously he still coach as good as anybody in the country, but trusting people with certain things. Obviously Lee's a recruiting savant, works his fanny off and does a great job. Frank's super high energy, but I think you're walking into a situation where the energy is amazing. And after having talked to you really for the first time, after knowing who you were for years, I can certainly see why they brought you on. And I think your energy will feed right into theirs.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm excited, man. That was part of it too. Like, I got to know Pritz, and I was just like, we're two peas in a pod, and I've known Frank forever, and our wives are best friends. We both have kids, and we went out to dinner with Zeke when we were out there looking at houses and stuff, and my wife and Zeke's wife hit it off right away, and I'm really excited to get to learn from them. Right, they're obviously doing something right, and they're killing it. So I just can't wait to be out there, right? I'm in the text right now, I'm in the emails, and I'm just excited to get boots on the ground and get to work and really just get my paws in there, man, and freaking help them and do what I can to be an asset to the program. And that's really where I see myself is eventually, just doing everything I can to help bring a national title to Arizona State.
So we're recording this on the morning of September 21. How soon are you out there?
I'm driving. So it's funny. My buddy, Austin Miller, who is an assistant coach at Brown, he now lives in Lancaster and he does some stuff with wrestling. But I was like, dude, I will pay you to help me drive this stuff out there. Cause we have 2 dogs, we have 2 kids. So the U-Haul comes on Monday. I load it up, and then I load it up Monday and Tuesday. And I'm just like going through and I'm starting to pack some of this crap up. And I'm like, nope, that goes, this stays, this goes, dumpster outside. And I'm like, my wife comes home, the dumpster just gets a little higher every day. She's like, I'm not even going to see what you threw away, because I'm sure it's something that was like, I just filled up like, yeah, like I'm like throwing away stuff left and right. And she's like, Eric, if you throw away like the kids' like first baby pics, like something like that, she's like, I'm going to kill you. That's what's going to happen. So, and she's still working, but luckily she got a teaching job in Arizona. So we'll have a couple days together to kind of like go through some more stuff. But yeah, it's stressful, man. But it's fun too. So I'm driving out there. My friend's driving our car. We're selling one car here and then buying a new car out there for myself. So he's got to drive with the dogs. I'm driving the U-Haul. We're going St. Louis and then Amarillo and then Phoenix.
When you come through St. Louis, if are you stopping for the night?
Yeah, that's where we're going to stay.
Let's have dinner.
All right, let's do it.
That's where I live. So
Yeah,
you
that'd
got
be
my
awesome.
number. Just it'll be next week, right? Middle of next week, like Tuesday or Wednesday.
It'll be Wednesday night, I think. We're going to try and get on the road from State College to St. Louis. I want to try and get out of here by 6 because I want to drive early, get off the road like 6 to 6, and then be able to eat somewhere and get a good night's sleep and then get back on the road, right?
I'll help you get a good hotel. We'll take
There
if
we
you like
go.
Italian food, we'll take you down to the hill. That's
Let's do
what
it.
St. Louis is known for. Let's go.
Let's do it. Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of moving parts. I'm just like, holy cow, man, I got to figure this out. Cause even like last week, I was kind of starting to go through stuff, and I'm like, and then we went to my in-laws for the weekend, and my wife was like, well, Eric hasn't even started packing anything. So yesterday I got Sunday night, and yesterday I got going a little bit, starting to get some of our kitchen stuff. And I'm like, well,
I don't think I'm a hoarder, but I just have a lot of stuff, and you get a lot of free stuff, right? You get a lot of like t-shirt here and hat there.
yeah,
And maybe you wear it once or twice a year, but it's from somebody that is meaningful to you.
it's
And those
hard.
are probably the more difficult decisions. So,
It
so
is.
you'll be
It
out
is.
there
I
next week,
know.
probably around October 1, you'll be up and running, right?
That's the plan is we close on our house on the 4th. My wife and kids are flying out on the 2nd. So hopefully be there that weekend and do what I can. Hopefully have some kids on a visit.
That's the wrestle off weekend.
Is it?
I
I've
think
been
so.
looking. I'm like, dude,
Maybe. I
they've
think
been
so.
they've been sending me so many texts. I'm
No,
like,
no. I'm sorry. It's right around Halloween because I talked to those
okay,
guys. Yeah.
okay.
So
Don't
it's a
freak me
few
out
weeks
like
later.
that, man. I'm trying to
No.
keep
My
up.
fault. My fault. Yeah, we were working on talking to them about doing a camp, but that was different conversation. So,
Yeah,
well, look, man, it's been a pleasure to talk to you and to meet you. Like,
absolutely.
watched you wrestle for a long time. Big fan. Hopefully we covered some things that not everybody else asked about.
Yeah, it was
Uh,
good.
wish you the best of luck out there, and we'll talk to everybody soon. Thank everybody for watching, listening, and sharing. We'll speak to you all next week.